Greetings, geeks. Welcome to episode 708 of Geeks in Space. I'm Rob Commander Takamaldo, and I am joined today in pretend low Earth orbit by Chris DeBona.
Hi.
And Rob Roseboom.
Hello.
Gentlemen, everything's great. Let's talk about the news.
Yeah, we should.
Did you see? I'm a little skeptical of this media website's carbon footprint thing. The estimate was 70% of carbon footprint of the web is caused by ads and stats. Now, I'm a little skeptical because I'd like to know more about methodology, but I will say, we in like the mid to late 2000s went through a pretty big project where we tried to speed up the performance of that website we used to work at, and we determined that something like 2/3 of the load time of the site came from the ads. That was just load time, raw load time. This isn't anything about carbon
and so you try to block them off into their own defined frames so that the rest of the page would render around them while they load from whatever ad network.
I mean, Chris, this was after your time, but we spent basically 6 months doing nothing. Our entire goal was to shave it was something like the page would render in like 2.5-3 seconds in our typical use cases, and we spent 6 months and we got it down like well under a second, like crazy fast, like Google in the mid 2000s fast. You know, and our reward for that was they then added a new ad position and slowed down the website to slower than it was when we started.
Yes. Look at all that improvement we can take away with more ads. That's revenue, my friends.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm not bought in on the methodology like you, but I do know that there's a lot of code and very large payloads coming from analytics, coming from ad providers. The payloads are substantial. I mean, I know I'm going to sound like a shell, but this is why Google's been carbon negative now to the beginning of our company. We've made a point of offsetting and now over provisioning solar and wind and hydro sources of energy, because this stuff does take up a lot of energy, right? So yeah, so I'm not sure about the 70%. That seems a bit much, but I could see it.
Yeah,
I could see this being,
I can't even dare turn off. Like sometimes I have to turn off the pi hole that I have on my network. But just doing that, and I'm not even talking about performance. I have like gigabit speeds into the house. It's the clutter on the web page visually that makes it impossible for me to even read. And like all those stupid windows that I have to close and stuff, getting rid of as many of those helps. But the performance thing, like just globally speaking, I wonder what percentage of like internet packets is related to this. I wonder, like all of this stuff, man, it adds up a lot, and the incentives are just different, right? Like when you build the website, it's user performance. When it's monetization, it's not about the user experience, it's about squeezing that nickel. It's like you're it's so hard.
Yeah, no, it's funny because a good friend of mine, he was in charge of the team inside search infrastructure to address what we considered to be a latency crisis, and he managed to shave, it was like 0.125 seconds across the board on our serving infrastructure. It was honestly a Herculean effort, and it's just like, yeah, it's a lot of work, to get that stuff moving more effectively. But think about that. That's what, an eighth of a second?
Yeah,
it's taken off the cost of every web page loading Google Analytics.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like this has big impact, right? So
Yeah,
anyway,
especially on those JavaScript libraries that are embedded on, on like a million websites.
yeah.
That's a whole
Well,
different thing.
what was his name? Steve something. Nice guy. He was at Google, then he went over to Yahoo. He's probably at Facebook. I don't know. But
Don't you
he
mean Meta?
sure,
We're
whatever.
supposed to we're
Uh,
supposed to identify the conglomerates by the parent
so
company that
so
they
from
use.
Alphabet to who owns Yahoo now? Microsoft? I don't even know. I
I don't
mean,
know.
Bing,
Yeah, to
Comcast.
Bing.
Doesn't matter. So anyways, but he had this thing called the it was like FastWeb was the name of his project, and he stood up those JavaScript caches. He stood up the later versions of HTTP, which then eventually became Quick, and it's like he really understood how to make things faster on the internet. And then we stood up the Band-Aid network for YouTube to bring bits closer to users. And yeah, it's really it's really a hard problem
I
to
think that's the
do
thing that
this,
people don't understand is that there's like there's like two or three different problems, right? There's building the
Yeah.
thing that people want to use, which is really
Yeah.
hard.
It's
And
really hard.
yeah, then there's getting people there to actually use it, but then there's
And then then
actually
paying for it,
then there's
because which is
paying
what
for
all the
it,
ads are for,
but then there's
so
scaling it, and then
yeah.
there's scaling it and making it fast. And very
Yeah.
few applications achieve that because what people don't understand, I think, is that at scale, even the littlest of things is
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I was just skeptical.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, the thing is, again, I don't know about the 70% because I mean, you really have to survey more of the web, right? But
Well, sure. And like
you know,
if you it's hard if you okay, I watch a YouTube video, right?
yeah,
Obviously, a substantial percentage of the carbon footprint is the video, but that's the thing that I'm watching. That's the thing I want. So that's not ads and
yeah.
stats. That's
So
video streaming.
once it leaves Google's network, that YouTube video is now consuming carbon of whatever you and your upstream ISP, if we don't have machines there, are consuming,
Right.
right? So what's the carbon footprint of a chocolate rain or a Geeks in Space, of course, because everyone's watching that.
There's not a
Uh,
lot of we're actually carbon neutral.
Mhm.
yeah, I used to know the dollar cost. I mean, this was so long ago though that it's all changed now. But I used to take my budget and divide it by the cost of pushing chocolate rain.
So this is 4
So
chocolate rains, or this is 9 chocolate
well, it
rains.
was a substantially larger number than that. My budget's kind of crazy, um, but yeah, it was pretty fun. But
Everything
yeah,
is measured
so
in terms of
what's the
a.
carbon footprint of chocolate rain? That's the question.
I,
You know.
I like it. All right, well, let's see. There's
I have to tell you, one of the things I
yeah.
thought about and I really wanted to talk to you guys about. Do you remember when we were at Slashdot and we were doing all those partnerships with like IBM and SourceForge to have like people be able to build on a Z series mainframe and all the
Oh,
rest, right?
sure.
I was having such flashbacks when Linus Tech Tips they were basically they went to an IBM testing center and they were talking about the Z series mainframe, and I'm like, I have seen this SpawnCon before. They've
Yep.
reached the point in their evolution where
Yep.
IBM is paying them to talk about Z series mainframes.
Yep.
This is amazing, And I'm just like,
History repeats
and
itself.
there was this story in the New York Times about their merch store, and I'm like, this is just Think Geek, man.
Oh
This is
yeah.
Think Geek all over again. It was
No,
something.
history repeats itself, man.
Yeah,
I like Linus Tech Tips. I
me too.
can't call it Linus. I have to call it Linus
Yeah,
because I can't.
because of who we are. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't unprogrammed that. But my problem with that is that that show is really inconsistent for me.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
like I guess what it comes down to is I'm more of a uh, uh, gamers Nexus sort of person than a Linus person because they tend to. I feel like they're talking down to people on that show.
I don't get that vibe. I mean, there's sometimes too cool for school around
Yeah,
gaming and stuff,
that's kind of how I.
But that's kind of the world, that world. I mean, I'm sure people accused us of the same thing
Well, I think that
when we
that's
were
a.
young. When we were young,
Yeah, no, I think that there's a Gen X versus millennial sensibility shift.
Mhm.
That like I had a really hard time like boasting, and Linus Tech Tips has a lot of boasting. Like there's a lot of they talk about how expensive the things are that they're reviewing and stuff. And
Yeah,
like,
when they do that, I'm like, is this SpawnCon? Because I don't care how many NVMe drives you have in your RAID array, bud. I would love to see the numbers, like which of those videos actually get the views from their readership, from their audience.
you know,
So
but they do every now and then put up a thing that I really enjoy. I like though when
yeah.
the things that I liked more on that channel are those that like when they do weird stuff like water cooling PCs with garden hoses and stuff like that's just fun.
Oh, they had one. It was like they were water cooling it with like an enormous transfer pump, and I'm like, that's a terrible idea.
Oh, for
I'm like,
sure.
what are you people doing? And that was more like almost watching Jackass. It's like, oh look, they're
Ooh,
gonna kick themselves in the nuts. It's like,
right?
yeah,
Too much of what I see when I see Gamers Nexus and Linus Tech Tips is deja vu.
yeah,
Like, oh, you're at
I hear
that
that.
point. Like Gamers Nexus is like 3 or 4 years before. But they're all like, it's like, okay, I can kind of slate where you are now into,
Yeah,
our history, and you guys have now surpassed where we ever were, but the scale is different now because of
yeah,
video. It's weird.
yeah.
Anyway, there was a QR code
Sorry.
in
Rob's like, oh, should I pay attention again?
Mer-
Hmm?
what
What?
what so drones formed a QR code. Was this in Dallas?
In Dallas, yeah.
And it was just a code to Rickroll.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, you got to give them credit.
Are they?
But not too far away from doing that for ads, I would imagine.
Oh, for
Do you know what the power
spam?
consumption of all those drones is? My goodness.
Yeah.
Those drones were not
It's
carbon
carbon
neutral.
footprint
Yes.
for sure, at least 70%.
And then Rick Astley, all those pranks.
What people don't know is that Rick Astley himself is not carbon neutral. That guy just
No.
eats a lot of beans.
Yeah. He's a methane producer.
This kind of reminds me of do you remember what game it was? I think it was Torment. That part of their marketing ploy was they sent out a box to different reviewers, and once you opened the box, it started rickrolling you, and there was no way to get the box open short of actually taking a blowtorch to it until the battery ran out, and that
Whoa.
was like their shtick for their game. I think the game was called Torment.
Well,
That game.
then they did it right.
Yeah.
Good on them. The thing that does make me a little nervous about this is that we are training a generation of people to just click on QR codes, and with like, there are vulnerabilities in our web browsers. We are eventually that is eventually going to cause a problem. Like the Super Bowl had one, right? They had that Crypto Bros thing that had a QR code just flashing on the screen for the whole 30-second ad.
Really?
Like, yeah.
Wow.
It was some
That stinks.
cryptocurrency thing. I don't even remember, but the details of it. But eventually, somebody's just going to start putting out QR codes that hack that own your machine with some 0-day, and they're going to build a botnet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little wary because like what's the new Marvel show? I can't remember. Moon Knight. There's a QR code that keeps showing up in Moon Knight, and if you click on it, it just takes you to a random issue, or not a random, an issue of that features Moon Knight in a comic book. And I'm like, I guess, but I'm a little nervous just clicking on QR codes off my TV now.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be too. I think it's like a weird way to do a 0-day. And also, yeah, that QR code works today, but 20 years from now, someone else picks up the domain.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of crypto, 2 weeks from now, somebody else picks up the domain.
Right.
And suddenly, you're going somewhere maybe the Moon Knight producers didn't expect you to. So.
Surprise.
Or the Super Bowl stuff.
Right. Do either of you know enough physics to explain to me what this story about
Yeah,
the new heavy
yeah.
particle is?
So I posted this. What happened was they were measuring W bosons, right, which are a form of particle that has a certain electron volts of size, scope, energy, whatever. Anyway, so they've been measuring this thing, and it's consistently coming back 7 electron volts heavier. And remember, we're talking of like, this is like a fraction of a percent, like 1,000th of a percent heavier than it should be in the model. And so they're like, what's going on? So so they've confirmed with their equipment, their experiment, that it is coming back heavier. So now they need to do it on another accelerator to make sure that it's not like something fundamental about, I think it was Fermi. Who did this, yeah, Fermi. So yeah, so there you go.
I
But if this is consistent, then,
It means our physics is wrong again.
well, I mean, that's the point of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it means that there's either a new kind of particle, there's some interaction that we're not accounting for, or and of course, and somebody brings up dark energy, but whatever,
Yeah. Well, they always
because
do.
they're always looking for
That's the
where the hell
boogeyman.
it went. Well, it's kind of like, yeah, exactly.
I do not know anything about quantum physics, to be clear. So I now speak merely as a person who does understand a few things about the universe and human nature and such. I kind of think that we're just all totally wrong, and there's like something stupid and obvious, but physics has been wasting its time for 30 years.
Well, people aren't really talking about string theory anymore. And
Yeah.
that's because they're not sure it's not just a pretty story that people like saying.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the way of all science, right? It's the way of
Exactly.
everything we do. Whereas we get little bits right sometimes, and then we use those little bits to come up with other ideas that turn out to be completely wacko. And then sometimes we're like, well, wait a second, that isn't wacko. We thought something else was happening, and now it's kind of true. So
Yeah. And
I mean,
sometimes
that's just the way of things.
you'll get a scientist whose picture of the world, he'll say, if it worked this way, that'd be really cool. And then they test it. Oh, it does work that way. And then you get,
Mhm.
that's where you get your Einsteins and your Hawkings and the rest, right?
Well, I'm just this story is weird. I like this sort of thing.
Man, I love these detectors. They're so cool.
Right?
Did I show you guys? I bought a the collimator crystal.
Yeah, you showed
I
us
finally
that.
got one. That's so cool.
You can collimate in your own home.
I can collimate at home.
You guys think you're so cool doing SETI at home, but I'm doing real physics here.
Oh wait. Okay, here. So I had it wrong. It wasn't 7 electron volts. It was 76
It was a lot.
million electron volts heavier.
It was a lot.
So roughly 7 times larger. So the question is that 7 times dark matter? Is that why all of our equations are like plus dark matter?
Right.
It's like.
Well, that's the thing that I keep thinking about. Everything in physics just seems to have plus fudge.
Well, I mean, actually, the first E equals MC squared also had and a constant at the end of it.
But we hadn't. Was this because we hadn't
finally
measured the
dropped
speed of
that.
light?
So no, it's just it was a cosmological constant. That was it. And that was Einstein's fudge number. But he dropped that eventually. So
And now we all know that C stands for cookie, and that is good enough for me.
it is good enough for you.
So did this?
I had not seen this article.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So the story is that the U.S. government has theoretically been, I guess, doing what McAfee couldn't do. Getting rid of viruses. I don't know, removing viruses, removing malware, but it's removing it like without really asking, I guess. So like we have like rival malwares, And the intent here is, at least in the publicity sense of it, is to preempt Russian cyber attacks. But of course, I would assume that if you take down one botnet, all you're doing is replacing it with your own.
Yeah.
Maybe that's cynical on my part.
There's a lot of stories that are popping up in the last few weeks in particular, just sort of highlighting how Russia is basically incapable of doing anything to other countries, basically, right? So they have huge stories now about how poor their logistics are.
Yeah.
There was a story about how one of the parts that goes wrong in their heavy machines often is only made in the Ukraine. So since they're attacking the Ukraine, they have no access to these parts
Oops.
anymore.
Our bad.
Oopsie.
And here's another one. It's like, turns out we could have just stopped all those Russian hackers anytime we wanted. We just really never tried. you know, it's odd how many
Yeah.
of these type of stories are popping up.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that what we see, I guess, is not surprising, which is that hiring 1,000 people, putting them in a building and having them flood Twitter is a lot easier than waging modern war.
And wildly destructive.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the damage that you can do with that. I mean, I don't know how many people they've got, employed in, spamming Twitter or whatever, or in automated ways, or, and if how much of them are like straight up crime syndicates, and how many of them are on the payroll of oligarchs, or how many of them are legitimate, like government employees. But like you read all these weird stories about what they're trying to do, and that's relatively bang for buck, really effective.
Yep.
Yeah. I have to tell you, this is a great poll quote.
The entire Russian nation state versus
Peter? I'm gonna lose. Like, Peter's got his head on straight.
That's right.
He
Peter
knows
Fletcher,
what's going on.
information security officer for the San Jose Water Company.
Yeah, that's
Poor
really
Peter.
funny.
Poor
He's like,
Peter.
well, if they come
Peter,
after
your
me, I'm
nation
gonna
needs
lose.
you.
That is very, very funny.
Yeah. I don't know. The thing.
Come on, Peter, you could do it.
Come on. Just like put another VPN up.
Oh god.
Install
VPNs are
upgrade McAfee.
Start cutting links to the outside world.
That's right. Don't click on links that come from unknown
Yeah,
IPs.
don't click on drone QR codes. There,
Don't
Peter.
click on. Yeah, that's how the Russians are
Not
doing
gonna
it.
work anyway.
It's just the tragedy of war notwithstanding, the most interesting part of what's been happening is just watching the cyber warfare stuff play out.
Yeah.
This is new. Like, we've seen it in little bits and pieces, but like to see it kind of all happening simultaneously like this, it's different, man.
Honestly, I really need to reread that entire article because it doesn't feel very meaty. It mentions botnets and then it just talks about people who are vulnerable, and I'm like, okay, so somebody's taken credit for taking down a botnet.
Yep.
Did they take over the communications of the botnet on IRC?
Or did they just upgrade it?
Or
and Amblou makes a really good point. How much of this is just
Russia being incompetent?
Well, how much of it is just propaganda? Because like we're not seeing the other side's photographs.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very least, every mistake is being reported and amplified, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, SpaceX has been trying for like a long time now to get expanded functionality at their Boca Chica facility. They've been trying. They want to build another tower. They want to do a lot there. And there's been a whole bunch of bunch of shenanigans with this. There's like eco surveys and like, all right, I don't really understand any of the details of this. It seems like, if you want to launch a rocket over the ocean and your only customer is basically the government, they should probably let you do it, but they got denied.
Well, this is the thing. You can launch some things in French Guiana. You can even launch things. Well, you used to be able to launch them with the Dnepr in Russia, right? But if you want to launch specific payloads, you have to launch from a U.S. location, right? So
You're
that leaves
talking
you
military
Florida.
payloads, or are you talking just
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
it into orbit?
Well, I'm talking military payloads.
Gotcha.
And yes, you want to be near the equator and
Right.
but there are certain payloads that, like, so for instance, if you wanted to put an imaging satellite up, right, back
And I
in
do.
the old days, as you do,
Mhm.
or a communication satellite, maybe, you would think that Starlink you could launch that from
I
anywhere,
don't know.
but
A picture is worth 1,000 words. Let's get the imaging satellite up first.
okay, so if you want to put an imaging satellite up and it has a resolution higher than I think a meter per pixel, you can launch it from a Russian launcher like a Dnepr back in the day, but you had to deliver it already in the fairing.
Ah,
So all you could do is lift it and put it on the rocket. That's it. They couldn't look inside. They couldn't open it up. They couldn't shake test it. They just could put it on top of the rocket and launch it. And so people are like, "Well, that's stupid. I'm just going to launch in the United States or in French Guiana." Da, 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 So, uh, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of weird regs, right? So, to your point, this means that we as a nation are incentivized to get these launch complexes running and up, and not get them stuck. So, my question is this SpaceX not doing their paperwork?
Yeah, they didn't send in their TPS reports at
that's
I
all
mean,
yeah.
did they
for
not send in
over a
their
week.
TPS report? So.
But whenever you read these sorts of stories, like I always feel like there's two sides to these stories. What's really going
Yeah.
on, we'll never know.
Actor, SpaceX failed to provide requested information.
Yeah,
Story
the
link
red tape
comments.
is thick,
Yep.
especially if someone has a bone to pick with you. And that's what I think when I read these stories. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they have not greased the proper wheels and they've tied them up in paperwork. Because
Exactly.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
Well, but like, I mean, to go back to the Ukraine thing, like our future in space is largely dependent on us being able to get these facilities up and running and get like. So SLS is never going to be the thing that they're pouring billions of dollars of taxpayer money into. SpaceX looks
Mhm.
like it will be. Like maybe let's do that. let's give them some of the billions of dollars that is going to just be squandered by us testing SLS over and over again, and maybe just say, hey, give rid of some red tape.
But I'm trying to find the article by this Justin Bachman guy, right? And he's got I'm gonna follow this guy. He's got a hell of a feed, man.
Is he like
So like
Scott Manley Jr.?
no, I mean he's a reporter for aerospace, right? So like for instance, this thing, it's like it looks like Amazon's using the ULA launchers, with I guess a Blue Origin tippy top or something,
Aw.
but also using some Ariane launches. Very interesting, So I mean, because the Blue Origin can't go high enough yet, right? So
Well, I'm following him now too.
yeah, you should. He's really neat. And the other guy who was listed in the SpaceX thing was Sergio Chapa.
Get to the shoppa.
Get to the Chapa. This is a Houston guy, so it's just like everything Houston.
Right.
You're gonna get energy stories. You're gonna get all kinds of stuff. I'll follow him though. I mean, geez.
I can't. I'm pretty stingy with follows at this point. I've been unfollowing people. I'm gonna get myself down to
Oh,
like
here you go.
50.
Here's the story. Yeah.
There you go. Well, let's see. You guys watched the Doctor Strange trailer?
Yes.
I did, Rob. What did you think? Should I ping Cliff?
No. Poor Cliff has important work to do, educating the youth of tomorrow.
Mhm.
I guess the youth of today, the leaders of tomorrow.
Here it is. Doctor Strange. Multiverses of Madness.
You're right about the third eye thing. Nobody
so
has.
lame.
It's an uncanny valley thing. Like you put that
it's
third
just-
eye, and it never looks right.
It looks dumb, like aggressively dumb. Let me find the frame.
Yeah, the main thing about this trailer is that it showed Wanda's twins. So, although we all assumed, now we have visual confirmation that Wanda grumpy about losing her boys.
There you go.
Yeah.
Weird.
Here, I'll go back just far enough so you can see it open. Are you ready? Here we go.
It's gonna be loud. Oh no, you muted.
Well, that's
Ugh.
lame.
It is lame.
It's just so dumb.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, Benedict.
Oh, Mr. Cumbersnatch. I was actually trying to see about finding a showtime for that, and there's no showtimes that I can do that are earlier
wow.
than 8.
wow.
That we were trying to get a place so we could get a bunch of kids on a school night, but I don't think a bunch of kids on a school night can go to a movie at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
but you know me, I'll watch anything. I watched
The multiverse is
Morbius.
kind of played out for me. You went and saw that?
I went to a movie theater and saw
good
Morbius.
God.
I saw it in like a 500-person IMAX theater, and I was so mad because during the last trailer, a second person came in. I almost got to watch an entire IMAX theater by myself for an entire movie, and I have tried. I have gone to see a lot of IMAX movies.
Did you try making the experience uncomfortable for that other person?
Like
So
sitting next to them. Like
Yeah.
move to sit right next to them. Hi.
No, I just by coughing over and over again and saying, "Oh God, I'm sick of this COVID." You know, over.
I
and
really
over
like
again.
Jared Leto though.
telling him facts about Morbius from the comic books and stuff.
Right? He's like 6 rows behind me, but I'm like, "Hey, did you know that Morbius?" Oh no, that wouldn't be cool. Here's the thing about Morbius. It is not as bad as I thought. It is still horrible.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go in with, it's like anything. If you go in with super high expectations, you're bound to be disappointed. If you go in expecting absolutely nothing, well, when
And
there's a couple of good spots, you're like, well, this isn't complete trash.
it is, the movie itself doesn't make a lot of sense. There's like things that like happen off screen that you just are supposed to know that happen, and you know because you know how storytelling works. But like that, you're just supposed to guess. And
Like they don't show him turning into a vampire.
yeah,
Mm.
it's
He
weird.
just suddenly is a vampire.
Right. It's like,
They don't
Seriously?
get into any of
no,
that.
no, it's not like that. But it's just,
Oh.
there's just like relationships between characters and information that just seems like people know. And then like it's not really explained how they know it. The other thing is that the camera is like often zoomed in and shaking so much, like during scenes that don't warrant it at all. It's like really jarring, and I was watching it on an IMAX screen, so it was just like, come on, man, put it on a tripod.
Come on, man.
Just put it on a tripod. Like, sure, you want to shake the camera around like to add energy to scenes. Like sometimes that makes sense. This was not the case. Most of the special effects were fine. Some of it looked pretty bad. They are constantly making Jared Leto and Matt Smith's face like morph between vampire face and actor face, just constantly, like throughout scenes. Like, I'm a vampire, now I'm a person. It's jarring, and it's not that it looks bad; it's just stupid. Like, your face can't just morph like that. You're like an organic creature. You're like your
Well,
bones don't move.
Excuse me if I'm wrong, but he becomes a vampire from vampire bat blood serum, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that doesn't make you a vampire, right?
Well, okay, it's chimera blood. They are genetically merging bat blood with human blood, and somehow that allows you to go poof, turn into like smoke, and fly
just
through the
like
sky,
a vampire bat does.
as vampire bats are known to do.
Yeah.
And like, and both of the post-credit stingers are Spider-Man related, but they're stupid.
Of course.
And
Well, he has
Remember,
a
we brought you Spider-Man.
villain, sort of.
Yeah.
And reluctant teammate later.
Right. I'm stuck in the stupid Sony universe and not the good universe. It's
third eye guy.
That's right. It's you know, when it comes out, you can watch it on a streaming platform of your choice, and it is,
That's my plan.
It is totally an acceptable mediocre schlock movie. But
Moon Knight, on the other hand,
Moon Knight's
I'm
fun.
all in for. I liked the second episode quite a bit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the second episode. My wife came home.
I won't say anything
We're gonna
more
watch
then.
that tonight. You know.
Yeah,
so.
we'll pass. But Rob, I'm with you. I enjoyed the second episode of Moon Knight a lot. I did without being spoilery, a critic that I listened to his podcast said that he's seen the first 4 episodes. He said episode 3 is the slowest of the season. And then he says it picks up, or at least 4 picks up. He'd seen 4 of 6. So I'm really liking what they're doing with the show. I'm liking everything about it. It's fun. I loved Mr. Knight. That was very fun.
They throw in a little bit of actual Moon Knight in this one for people who like Moon Knight. So
Weird.
They give you a little bit of that, and stuff happens. They give you a little bit of backstory. Things are explained.
Yep.
Things are said.
But just a little bit, not a lot.
Nope.
Just enough to make you excited to tune in next week.
Tune in next week for more Moon Knight. Sorry.
No, I'm all in. Oh, okay. Oh, your poor shoulder. I'm sorry, Chris.
It's okay.
Picard.
This is my first day I'm allowed to
continued.
not wear a sling. So
Picard continued to disappoint this week. You'll be unsurprised to know.
Did you watch it?
I did.
Why?
Because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I will watch all things Star Trek.
Okay. It's your vow.
It's not my vow, but I just so far I keep doing it.
It's his burden.
I haven't watched the Prodigy show, the Nickelodeon kids show. I haven't watched that.
Oh, I've watched that.
Yeah, I watched the first episode, and my kid had no interest in it, so I didn't bother continuing.
It's a kid show, you know.
Yeah. Well, so the kid and I watched Lower Decks, and he's all in, and we've talked extensively about how that show's pretty mediocre, and you're right, it's pretty mediocre, but you know what? As a kid's show, it's fun. But no, this last episode of Picard was like the budget episode, because like 2/3 of it is just taking place at like a party, and the party was already like last season. The last episode was like half at the party, so they filmed like an episode and a half at a ball.
The most expensive part of this episode was the canapes. Is what you're saying?
Yep, the catering.
All right.
It's nice. I hope they do something with it, but so maybe what you should do is don't watch the whole show, but just watch the parts with Alison Pill and the Borg Queen. Because I think that stuff's really fun. I think that she's performing it well. I think the story is fun. And everything else is awful. 7 of 9 and Rafi like just stand around with nothing to do. Like they're just like extra characters that shouldn't be there. It's so weird. All right, the last one that we had on the list was Chris, the AGPL story.
Yeah. So what happened was a company wrote a tool. I think it's Neo4j or whatever, and they released it under the AGPL with an extra clause, and basically making it not AGPL anymore. And the lawsuit was whether or not they could do that. And the answer from the court was they're the copyright holder. They can do what they want.
Yeah, you can write it.
They can modify the license. It's not the AGPL anymore. It's not open source anymore. But that was not the issue that they were deciding. You know, and so the response from the OSI, I think from the FSF, was like, this isn't the AGPL. You can't do this. And it's like, well, unfortunately, the court's like, they're the copyright holder, so they can do what they want, you know? And so it really speaks to maybe better policing on the part of the FSF and the OSI saying, well, you know, if they add this clause and they're the copyright holder, it is no longer AGPL.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that makes me really angry.
That's the long and short of it.
They should be allowed to license their software however they want, but if you're going to call it the AGPL, you're being a jerk.
Well, that's the thing. So I think we proved that Neo4j was being a cad, a jerk, they shouldn't have done that. They should have just said it's the well, and here's the thing, in their defense, they didn't call it the AGPL plus Commons. They called it the Neo4j license.
Oh, well then.
Right. So it's like, and it was just the AGPL plus the Commons, and with the restriction against adding additional clauses for downstream consumers removed. But it's like, I mean, they kind of didn't do anything wrong. And the thing is, I don't know if they were around, selling this thing as just, oh, it's just AGPL, don't worry about it. I don't know if that's what they were doing. But it seems like it's just a person licensing with an open source adjacent license, which is a little creepy, but okay.
Not the first time.
Yeah, and yeah. So the court's like, well, they are the copyright holder. They're not putting on airs. They didn't give up rights when they, took in patches from the outside world if they took them in at all. So yeah. So does it add a legal headache? No more than any other open source adjacent license does, or proprietary license. So I don't know. Yeah,
Remember when there
I
were only
haven't
like
I
two?
haven't dove deep on this one.
Remember when there were only like 2 licenses and it was no big deal?
That was actually never true. Except
Well,
for maybe
it
in
was
like the
true in the 80s.
early 90s, early 90s, late 80s, you had MIT and BSD and GPL. That was it.
Good times.
So
Good times. Simpler times. Random Hijinks thanks us for not being crypto stands.
oh yeah.
Now it's time for us to now it's time. Remember, I have 1 Bitcoin that I've had for 10 years.
Yeah. Get rid of that thing. Yeah. Anyway.
I would, but then I'd have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay taxes.
Death and taxes. That's all you got left. So.
I finished my taxes, Chris. I'm done. I don't have to do taxes for this year anymore.
Yeah.
So happy.
Me too.
All right, folks. Is there anything good to watch this weekend? Anything new happening?
Well, that's a good question.
I just started Severance.
Is it good?
The first episode was awesome.
It's certainly well advertised.
It's slow. But not in a negative way. It's a take your time and chill. I really liked the first episode. But it has like a Michel Gondry, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind kind of thing happening, and I'm really enjoying it.
Okay.
But of course I made the tragic mistake of watching it.
Is it about firing people?
No.
Laying off?
Okay, so do you want the premise?
Yeah, what's the premise?
The premise is that there is a floor in a building where all the employees have had their brains severed mentally from their home life and their work life. They walk into a room and they no longer can remember anything that happens outside. And when they leave, they no longer can remember anything that happens at work. So I don't know what they're doing, or what they're going to do with the show, but essentially the people who are working in this building are forever trapped because when they walk out of the door, they're gone. Like their psyche doesn't exist. They're only ever in this building, and they don't know who they are on the outside or what their life is. And it's
okay.
It's got a lot of good casting. Patricia Arquette is in it. The Jesus is in it. Adam Scott. But everybody is kind of just sad. So that's hard to watch. But it's visually really, really, really cool. Lots of weird color choices, lots of slow walking through scenes, lots of interesting flirting with science fiction ideas. And I made the tragic mistake of watching it with my wife. So it might take me 3 months to get through the next 9 episodes.
Fool.
I know.
So I have to admit, from the advertising and the name, I thought it was like an up in the air workplace sort of drama comedy.
No. Severance is disconnecting your brain, and the opening episode is all about like them basically talking to a woman who doesn't know who she is, and they're like, you're here because the outside you put you here, you don't even know your name. It's crazy. It's really cool.
Okay, we'll see how long it goes for you.
Well, the season finale aired like this week, and Twitter has had many, many, many good things to say about the finale. So I'm excited, and I'm glad to watch the whole season and not like have to wait a year to watch the end. But is there any like movies or anything coming out? I don't know. There's one movie that is coming out this weekend. It's got Michelle Yeoh in it. That looked really, really cool. I'm trying to find the name.
Star Trek Discovery?
No, Everything, Everywhere, All of the Time.
Oh, That looks, yeah, I saw
yeah,
that
yeah.
go by.
That looks really cool.
It'll either be good or terrible.
But it's a multiverse story, so sorry, Rob.
They're all
course it is.
multiverse stories now.
Of course it is. Until they've drained every last cent out of that idea, it's all multiverse stories.
It's weird that instead of getting sick of comic book movies, we turned every movie into a multiverse movie.
You know, is once Spider-Man, you know, the good one came out, everyone's like, oh, we're gonna go that direction.
It was into the Spider-Verse, right?
It was into the Spider-Verse. It did it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now we're ruined. I can't wait. I'm gonna totally go see this movie, but probably not until Tuesday.
No, Doctor Strange will suck hard enough that people will
Yeah.
be like, okay, no more multiverse stories for a while.
Yeah,
But then
and then Sony will bring out one. You
no,
know,
Sony's good. Well, the Flash movie, the Flashpoint movie is coming out.
Flashpoint. Ugh.
As usual, DC comes up right at the end for
Hey!
when everyone is sick of seeing something.
With their, you know, with Ezra Miller, you know, fresh off his most recent, you know, disorderly conduct
Apology tour.
arrest.
Hey guys, here's the worst version of stuff you like.
Yeah,
They got
and
a
like,
really good team over there.
yeah, this one was karaoke related,
The best
you know,
people.
disorderly conduct, and I'm like, oh, Ezra, you're just hitting all the marks, ain't you? You know,
That dude, man. The other Ezra Miller related thing is this: the new Fantastic Beasts coming out soon.
Yeah.
Man, that is a franchise that I can't believe how little I care about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll still go see it, but
Warner Brothers executives reportedly getting pretty nervous about Ezra Miller.
so are we.
I'm like, just now?
So are we, Warner executives. So
Yeah,
are
right.
we. All right, let's say goodbye. Go about our days.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, Rob Roseboom.
See ya.
Goodbye, Chris DeBona.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to episode 708 of Geeks in Space. I was Rob Commander Taco Malda, and we'll see you on Tuesday if you're lucky. Bye.